Hello everyone, welcome to the latest edition of my Nitro Retrospective, where today I will be covering the second half of 1997's Monday Nitro, which encompasses the 100 episode milestone and the big build-up to the biggest pay-per-view in WCW history, Starrcade 1997, and the major main event of Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus Sting. But before I get into all that, a couple updates to some of the content on the channel. You may have noticed I haven't been posting a whole heck of a lot lately, and the main reason is, as far as modern wrestling goes, there's just not a lot to talk about going on right now. Everybody, in the middle of COVID, everybody's just kind of coasting, and we're just trying to make do with what we have. So I don't really have a whole lot to talk about as far as new content goes. If anything interesting comes up, I'll comment on it. I know there was that Talkin' Shop-a-mania or whatever that was getting some attention online. I haven't seen it, but maybe I'll check it out just to give myself something to do. But as far as modern wrestling goes, there's just not a whole lot to talk about. It's just a bad situation, and it just is what it is until we can get back to some normalcy, given the state of the world, quite frankly. So to kind of fill the void, I've decided that instead of doing a massive 3-hour-long video like I did last time, where I covered all the movies and TV shows that I've watched and rewatched, I've decided to create two series of videos. One is going to be a weekly thing. I'm going to try and get it out weekly. Reviews of movies and television shows that I've watched and finished watching during that week, and then I will review those things. So it will be much shorter than a 3-hour thing like I did last time. And another series of videos I'm going to try and kick off is my DC animated movies review series. I watched I counted, it was close to 50 animated movies. Some of them are rewatches, a lot of them I watched for the first time, and I decided not to include them in the massive 3-hour thing, because I'm like, Jesus Christ, that thing's going to be that would have made it like a 10-hour video if I did that, and I had a lot of feelings on various different films. So that's a series of videos I'm going to start up doing, the direct-to-video DC Comics animated films. It's often been said by people that watch these movies that Marvel's the king of the live-action films, but when it comes to animated films, DC they're the kings in that realm, and I found that to be mostly true. I think for every bad one that I saw, there were 6 or 7 good ones, and there were way more good and great ones than anything, and I really want to talk about those movies. So that will be a series of videos I'll start up doing, maybe 10 movies per video or something. I haven't had a set time frame of when I'm going to start doing that, but I will knock those out, and that could be a nice little 4 or 5 part series, getting all those movie reviews out there. And I should note that these will go from Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, which was really the first direct-to-video DC Comics film, and that came out in the mid-90s, I think 97, 98. And the last one I watched was Justice League Dark Apocalypse War, I should say. Which came out this year. And that one was kind of the culmination of a major story arc and interconnected films that DC had been doing with the direct-to-video films. And in between I watched a lot, not all of them, I should make that note. I did not watch all of them. I didn't watch the Lego films. I know there were various direct-to-video Lego Batman films that came out that have nothing to do with the Lego Batman movie or the Lego movies that you saw in theaters. I haven't seen those, and those weren't part of my watch list. So I did not watch every single one, but I did watch and rewatch a lot of them, and I think it could make for a really fun video series to actually talk down and review these things. So that's something that's going to be starting up again. Also, my Star Wars book reviews are going to be starting up soon. I've started watching, or I've started rereading the Young Jedi Knight series. They're much quicker reads than I remember. I guess I'm a much faster reader now than I was back then when these books were coming out. And I started reading them a little less than 2 weeks ago, and I'm already 4 books down. And there's 14 books, so I think I can knock these out potentially on a monthly basis, because they are very, very quick reads. So that's something that I'll knock out as well. So you'll be getting Young Jedi Knight series reviews from me starting soon, hopefully in August. And I could resume doing monthly Star Wars book reviews for the foreseeable future. But, so those are things to look forward to. But with all that said, let's get started on 1997, the second half of 1997's Monday Nitro. I've said before that 1997 was the best year in Nitro history, and this certainly continues along on that path as we head towards the biggest pay-per-view in WCW history, the most financially successful pay-per-view in WCW history, and one that I'm going to be doing another video about. I've talked about this a little bit, but I got the idea to do a video, kind of a what went wrong, what went right comparison video between Starrcade 1997 and WrestleMania 14. So that'll be kind of a part 2 to this video. This is going to kind of set the stage for that. Because I have a lot of strong opinions about both shows, what they did right, what they did wrong. One show did mostly everything right, one show did mostly everything wrong. Some of it was just terrible bad luck that impacted the other show, but I think that could lead to some interesting discussions. But as we're building in to the Starrcade 1997 pay-per-view, I really found this period to be one of the hotter periods for the NWO, because this is where they took their asshole, dickish selves to the ultimate extreme, with Hulk Hogan attacking J.J. Dillon and injuring Roddy Piper, and Eric Bischoff, who was absolutely at his most hateable during this period, with the feud with Larry Zbyszko, which also played a big role into building into Starrcade 97. I mean, if you're a fan of Eric Bischoff and what a great heel he was, I think this second half of 97, especially as we get closer to Starrcade, I think it's Eric at his absolute best as a character. You just want to punch that guy in the face, and you want Larry, good old Larry Zbyszko, to absolutely beat the motherfucking shit out of him. And Larry Zbyszko, that was some of the best stuff I enjoyed during this period of Nitro, with him, like, finally, because the NWO had just constantly scared away, annoyed, threatened, and just chased off the announcers. It was like almost I don't want to say a weekly thing, but it was something that was done constantly, where they would constantly torture the announcers. And Larry Zbyszko was the first one to stand up and say, you know what, I've had enough of this shit. And he got in Scott Hall's face, he got in Eric Bischoff's face, and got tied in with those two. And that created some really, really great television. Kind of gave Larry Zbyszko almost like a career resurgence in a sense. And created some of the best moments in Nitro history, as far as I'm concerned. And other big things that took place, there was the betrayal of Curt Hennig, who had joined the Four Horsemen. He took Arn Anderson's spot, you see, as we built into the Fall Brawl pay-per-view and the War Games match, but he ultimately betrayed them and slammed the cage door on Ric Flair's head and joined up with the NWO. And that created a really good feud with Ric Flair that could have culminated at Starrcade, but things got in the way of that. But it did end up working out for Diamond Dallas Page in the end. So you got a really good heel out of Curt Hennig with all of that, and I thought all of that came off really, really well. And then, of course, the big storyline heading into this period, especially heading into Starrcade, was the build-up to Hogan and Sting. And on the last edition, I talked about how Sting finally picked a side and joined up with WCW, and then after that, he was the sporadic hero that would come up every once in a while. Not every show, but he would show up. And whenever he did, it was awesome. And we also got the stuff with J.J. Dillon, who was basically trying to bribe Sting into coming back and wrestling. And he's like, what do you want, Sting? And it's like, dude, you know what I want. I want Hogan. Give me Hogan. And they did those segments. But again, it's more like whetting the appetite and building anticipation for the big match. And Sting was great during this period. Like, easily the best character. Aside from maybe Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was really budding over on the other side of the thing, the other show, I would say Sting is probably the best character in wrestling at this point, where it's like, oh man, everything he does, it just gets a huge reaction, whether it be him entering through the rafters, or one of my personal favorite Sting moments and one of my all-time favorite Nitro moments was the Sting Army that hit the ring. If you have not seen this segment, I highly recommend you go check it out because it's great, where the Sting Army and all the Sting impersonators just flood the ring and go after the NWO, and the NWO just takes them all down one by one, and sometimes three at a time. And then Buff Bagwell pops one of the Stings in the mouth, and he no-sells it, and you just knew right there, that's the real Sting. And then Sting helps to chase off the NWO along with the other faces. And Roddy Piper was there as well. It's a beautifully well-done segment, and I love it. And Sting really added a lot to the enjoyment of Monday Nitro during this period. So obviously Sting is the big hero heading into Starrcade 97, and he was the big ray of hope. So no matter how hopeless things got for WCW, Sting was always there. And it created some really, really great moments. especially heading into that big pay-per-view. But before we get there, plenty of other stuff goes on. I feel like I should talk about the 100th episode of Nitro, which is one of the biggest episodes in the show's run. Mainly because it was the first Nitro to go 3 hours. It gave us the debut of the Nitro Girls, who I'll talk about in a little bit. And it concluded with the big Hollywood Hogan Lex Luger World Championship match where Luger defeated Hogan for the belt. To me, this was kind of the peak of Lex Luger's career as a worker. I talked about it before, how I felt like rewatching all this stuff, I've had to reevaluate Lex Luger's career. It's like maybe he was better than I thought he was. And he was certainly over. Like, oh my God, he's one of the most over guys on the show. And his victory over Hulk Hogan felt like a big deal. And it feels like one of the biggest moments in Nitro history. And it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And one of the best. It was one of those times where Nitro felt like a free pay-per-view. It was one of those. Not quite to the degree of the Georgia Dome show from '98, but we'll get there when that will actually be in the concluding video of the series. But Lex Luger getting the biggest moment of his career, the peak of him as a babyface in WCW, and kind of like the big victory over the NWO. It didn't last long because he would just drop it back to Hogan at the next pay-per-view. But as like a break, like a sigh of relief in the dominance of the NWO, I thought everything about this just came off really, really well, and it worked beautifully. And it was a nice kind of break before Hogan got the belt back and the NWO regrouped and then just kind of reasserted themselves over WCW, which ultimately culminated with them completely taking over Nitro with that famous NWO Nitro, with the segment, with the intro and the music and everything and taking down the whole set. Which the taking down of the set part did go way too long, and this is the Starrcade Go Home show, but that did go too long, and that's a fair criticism. But I thought everything else on the show worked really, really well, especially concluding with Sting going after Hogan and the NWO. A nice, like, setting the stage for what would happen at the pay-per-view, although plenty of things went wrong at the pay-per-view. But to keep the ball rolling on things that I enjoyed, I guess I'll talk about the Nitro Girls now, which the big dance troupe, or the cheerleader squad, or whatever you want to call them, that was debuted on the 100th episode, and became a huge staple of WCW television, especially on Nitro. And I don't know how people feel about the Nitro Girls. I've never really heard too many people talk about them. Personally, especially on this rewatch, I mean, teenage me is not going to be opposed to seeing beautiful women dance on my TV. That's never going to be a problem with me. Watching it as an adult, I kind of see the value that they brought, aside from hot, sexy women dancing in front of the TV. It was a nice, like, it was a nice, like, break from the action. And Bischoff has talked about this on his podcast, where he said that they were done to kind of, like, keep the live crowd jazzed up in between big segments and big matches. And I think they did that well. I'm not saying they're the best dance troupe in the world. There were times where I noticed, like, they're not completely in sync with each other. Of course, like me, like, I'm a big dance critic, and I have any justification to be telling them how to do it. But, I think they did add something to the show, and they added a very different flavor, and it's kind of like NFL cheerleaders. Of course, this is coming from a guy who's a fan of a team, the New York Giants, that doesn't have cheerleaders, and it pisses me off. But, I do think they added something. Of course, again, very lovely women and very nice to look at as well. I'm never going to be opposed to any of that. Kimberly Paige, I had a huge crush on her when I was really, really young, and that kind of got reignited while rewatching these Nitros. I'm like, good Lord, she is smoking. And you know what? All of them are really, really gorgeous in this. Spice seemed to be the one that everybody liked a lot, and I can see why, because she looks fun. She looks like someone that knows how to have fun. But Fire was really cute, and AC Jazz was really cute, and Che was really cute, and Tigress was another one, and then Shawn Michaels' wife, who would show up later, Whisper. She was also very nice to look at, arguably the best looking one of the bunch. So Shawn knew what he was doing. And I like the Nitro Girls. I think they added something different. I'm surprised that no one has ever tried to replicate it. I would have thought for sure, like, WWF would have tried to do their own version of it, or WWE now, or TNA had the cage dancers, but that kind of veered into the that was more like trashy. That was like, I don't know. That veered like too far into the sleaze aspect of it. It's like, to me, the Nitro Girls were very classy and very nice to look at. They never veered too heavily into the over-sexualization part that could be associated with it. I thought they were just very lovely women that danced and found ways to kind of keep us intrigued when something, when things weren't, or to keep us intrigued while in between segments after we'd already seen something amazing, or maybe there was a match that didn't excite us too much. The Nitro Girls could come out and kind of jazz things up a little bit. So I think they brought a value to the show, and they added something different, and no other wrestling show has really had their own version of the Nitro Girls, and I'm kind of surprised by that. But because there's been no attempt to kind of recreate them, it kind of gives Nitro its own unique place in history. That's like a unique identifier that Nitro has over other shows. We had the Nitro Girls, and they were great. And it's like, all right, cool. But other things that were going on during this time, this 6-month period, well, the tag team division was something that I really enjoyed. And I make it no secret, I like big, bruiser, badass tag teams. That's what I like. That's what I enjoy. I like it when just you get two big, muscled-up motherfuckers that just beat the shit out of people. I love them. It's one of the reasons why in AEW, one of my favorite teams is the Butcher and the Blade, because they're two badass motherfuckers that beat the shit out of people. I like that. I'm very easy to please when it comes to tag teams. When you look at the top of the tag division during this period, you had Public Enemy, the Faces of Fear, Ming and the Barbarian, Wrath and Mortis, the Steiner Brothers, and Harlem Heat. Oh my God, and the matches that these teams all had with each other were so much fun to watch, because they're just knocking the crap out of each other, and I loved it. It's like, oh my God, every tag match involving those teams, I was like, oh, be still my beating heart. This is exactly what I enjoy. It's almost like I booked the tag division. It's like, It's one of those weird moments where I'm looking back and watching, it's like, did I book this? Did I secretly book this and just forget about it? I don't know. But I really enjoyed the tag team division during this period for that very reason. It was just the style of tag team match that I just enjoy watching. So that was a delight. The Cruiserweight division still continued to go on strong. The best part about the Cruiserweight division during this period was Eddie Guerrero turning heel and embracing his heel persona, which did wonders for him as a character, and I think helped him come out of his shell and become more of an established part of the show. This would lead into his feud with Rey Mysterio. They would have a series of matches, most famously the excellent match that they would have at Halloween Havoc 1997. Terrific match. Arguably the best cruiserweight match in WCW history. I'm tempted to go that far with it. Excellent stuff. And again, I think the heel turn did wonders for Eddie and helped him to kind of become the Eddie Guerrero that would ultimately become a WWE Hall of Famer. Chris Jericho was not quite there yet. We were still into shitty, generic babyface Chris Jericho. But towards the end of the year, the heel started to come out a little bit, and that was nice to see. But 98, I'm going to be showering Jericho with all of the praises. But right now, we're still kind of dealing with crappy, boring, generic Jericho at this point. But we also get to see kind of a rise for Juventud Guerrera, who would start to come out of his shell a little bit and become one of the better cruiserweights on the show. And the Cruiserweight division, they provided the stuff that the heavyweights could not, which is like faster-paced, death-defying style matches. And they set themselves apart so much that they became like an anticipated part of the show all their own. And all of that was absolutely delightful to watch. So if you wanted to break from the NWO, you had the Cruiserweights to kind of keep you invested. But another big thing that happened during this period is that we got the debut of the man, Goldberg, his legendary debut against Hugh Morris, his first victory, the first victory in the streak. And it's so funny, like looking back at like these early days of Goldberg and the feud with Mongo, which didn't do a whole lot of favors for either man in the ring, but you could start to see like fans were recognizing that there was something there. Like, the fans caught on to Goldberg before anybody else did, I think. And by January 98, he's already almost like a bona fide superstar and one of the most over guys on the show. And I think a big part of that is because Goldberg was a guy, he'd go out there, no nonsense, beat the shit out of people, do some cool moves, and then get the fuck out of there. And there was no nonsense with him. There was no contest. There was no outside interference. None of that shit. You got clean, definitive wins almost every single Goldberg match. I think that was a major part of the appeal with him, is that you got like it almost felt like a real fight, like how a real fight would go with Goldberg, and they kind of kept the bullshit kind of off of him, at least for a little while. Again, we'll get there when we get into 1998. But when I talk about the bullshit, I'm talking about like NWO interference, causes a disqualification or a no contest, and that type of stuff. And that became way more common during this period as well. And this was the period where I started to be like, okay, guys, I'm a little sick of the no contest thing and the constant disqualifications thing. And there's a balance there, and it's okay to do that once in a while, but it felt like during this period, it's like, okay, I'm seeing it all the time now, and I'm getting a little tired of it. And then in 1998, they would do it even more, because yay! But this is also when they started experimenting with taking Nitro to 3 hours. I already referenced the 100th Nitro was the first one to go 3 hours. And then every month or so, they would try another 3-hour Nitro. And this would ultimately become a move that would harm the WCW programming, where they would move to 3 hours permanently, and it would oversaturate the product. This is in addition to adding Thunder to the mix, which made it just a complete clusterfuck, and made it even messier. But you started to see, like, I don't want to say holes in the armor, but slight dents in the armor during this period, and that would kind of culminate in Starrcade 97. And then we'd start to see the downward decline, but still, we're at a very, very hot period in WCW's history, and when you've got the Sting-Hogan feud to kind of like be the guiding force of the entire thing, it really is one of the best examples of how long-term storytelling and building that anticipation and not giving it to the fans right away and making them wait for it can really reap financial benefits. As, like I said, it's the biggest buy rate in WCW history. That can't be disputed. We can say whatever we want about the show itself, but the financial gains from that show and the patience displayed and putting all the pieces in place to make sure that everything worked and getting people excited for this match, all of that paid off. Match itself, I'm going to have lots to say about it when I do my next video, but I thought that all of the build-up itself went very, very well, and I think contributed to making Starrcade 97 a huge, massive success financially. A huge financial success. I want to make that point clear. Not necessarily a creative success, but so yeah, lots to talk about here. I mean, I could talk about kind of like, this is also the period where you start to see like Conan and Buff Bagwell start to come out of their shells a little bit and become the characters that they would become. Signs of Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner, are starting to come out a little bit. He's still tagging with Rick, and he hasn't turned heel yet, but signs of that character evolution are on the way. And like I said, I'll have a lot more to say when I talk about everything in my Starrcade 1997 pay-per-view, but when you look at the television that WCW was producing at this time and how exciting Nitro was, and how cool Nitro was, especially with the NWO thing going on and the Sting thing going on and everything else. And then when you look at the card for Starrcade 97 and what they had lined up, you had Hogan and Sting, the match that was a year and a half in the making. You had Larry Zbyszko versus Eric Bischoff, where Eric Bischoff was finally going to get his ass kicked by a guy you wanted to have kick his ass. You had the Giant and Kevin Nash, which would have been the Battle of the Giants. Flair versus Hennig, with Flair potentially getting revenge for Hennig betraying the Horsemen. And the debut of Bret Hart. And that's kind of the concluding part of 1997 here, where Bret Hart comes into the company, which should have been huge. And initially it was huge. It was like, oh my God, this is a huge get for them, especially with the fallout of Montreal and everything else. They've just been handed the most compelling character in all of wrestling, right, on a silver platter. And Bret Hart, you know, going into 1998 could have been and should have been a major part of WCW television. You could argue that he was like a prominent part of WCW television. It wasn't successful, and we'll talk about why in the next entry. But when you look at all those components and all the feuds and all the storylines that they had going into Starrcade 97, it was like, this could have been like the greatest pay-per-view of all time. At least from a make the fans happy, give them what they want, storyline payoff type of way. And I'm going to have a lot to say about why exactly that didn't take place. That concludes this period of WCW Nitro, a very exciting period, I thought, and some of the best wrestling television you could ever hope to find. Very exciting, week to week. A lot of great stuff. So let's close out with some of, like I said, I like to do best match, best episode, and the MVP of the period. So let's start off with best episode, which I actually had a three-way tie here. There were 3 episodes. I couldn't pick a winner, so I cheated and I did a three-way tie. First up is August 4th, 1997, which we're getting close to the anniversary of that. I'm filming this on August 2nd. So that was the 100th episode, the 3-hour special, with the debut of the Nitro Girls and Lex Luger defeating Hulk Hogan for the title, and ending that felt like something out of a pay-per-view. We also got some good stuff in here, like DDP versus Flair and Six versus Benoit, and a couple of solid matches like that. So that's also worth bringing up. But really, it's Hogan and Luger that made the episode really, really special. Next up, we've got the September 22nd episode, which gave us the debut of Goldberg, which is an awesome moment. Then hour 1 was full of upsets. The biggest one, the most significant one, being Hector Garza getting a win over Scott Hall. We also got to see Larry Zbyszko show his frustrations towards Hall a little bit. We got some cruiserweight luchador matches, including a very exciting 8-man tag. We got the Steiners versus the Faces of Fear, one of those matches that I really enjoy. An excellent promo from Roddy Piper, and a great bit with Hulk Hogan coming out wearing Ric Flair's robe, which was given to him by Curt Hennig after he had betrayed the Horseman. Another perfect example of Hulk Hogan being a total dickhead heel during this period. We also got an amazing moment, and I forgot to mention him earlier, but I'll talk about him now, where Raven, who they've been hyping up his debut for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and how he was like this, heavily sought after signing, and they got him, but he would only sign on his own terms and all this other stuff. So they really did a great job of building anticipation for Raven. And there was a moment on this show where he has a stare down with Macho Man Randy Savage, and the crowd popped. And I think it's a crime that we didn't get a full-fledged program from those two. I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine Randy Savage and Raven cutting promos on each other? Oh my God. And that one stare down where you were like, holy shit, what's going to happen? And we didn't get anything out of it, but the moment itself is awesome. We also got Henning versus Jarrett for the U.S. title, and an awesome moment with the Giant chasing off the NWO because he's a big, scary Giant and he can do that. So the September 22nd episode is a very exciting one worth talking about. My other one is my third one on this 3-way tie is the October 20th episode, the Halloween Havoc Go Home show, which also had a lot of exciting moments, probably the most significant of which being WCW getting their revenge on the NWO and just fucking them over at every turn. And it culminated at the end where, let's see, I'm trying to get a list of the names here. Yeah, I've already fucked it up. And the final episode that I picked as a favorite in this 3-way tie here is the October 20th, 1997 episode, which was the Halloween Havoc Go Home show, which concluded with a very exciting segment with DDP and Roddy Piper and Sting all battling the NWO as the steel cage comes down. Really, really great stuff and exciting television all around. We also got Hennig versus Malenko for the U.S. title. Which is a very unique and interesting matchup. And that's something I'll say more about in 98. But we got some like weird cross-generational type of matches during this period in WCW. And that was always a lot of fun to me. We got Goldberg squashing Wrath and continuing his path of dominance in the streak. Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit for the Cruiserweight Championship. And so many other things to really enjoy. Probably my favorite segment on the show was the Giant challenging Kevin Nash and setting up their big match for Starrcade. That didn't happen. But still, it's served as a reminder as to why I love the Giant during this time period. So that's 3 episodes that I picked for my favorite episode. The 100th episode, the September 22nd episode, and the October 20th episode. So if you're looking for the best episode during this 6-month period, those are my 3 picks. So from there, let's move on to best match. The match I'm going to pick was on the October 13th, 1997 episode where the Steiner brothers defeated the Outsiders. Kevin Nash did not participate in this match, and Syxx had to be his replacement. They were defending the tag titles under Freebird rules. And the Steiners, after basically chasing the Outsiders for the belts all year long, finally defeated them and won the tag titles with Larry Zbyszko counting the fall, which set up Scott Hall's situation with Larry Zbyszko heading into Starrcade and Sold Out 98. And I thought all of that came off really, really well, even though Nash... I'll have a lot to say about Kevin Nash in my next video. We'll talk about that. But Nash was not available for this match. So you didn't get the full payoff with the Steiners beating the outsiders that kept screwing them out of the titles. But the Steiner brothers had been screwed out of the tag titles just time after time after time after time. And then you get to this match, which I thought was a really exciting match, and the payoff of the Steiner brothers finally winning the tag titles from the outsiders. So for the storyline payoff, for the excitement in the ring, and for seeing one of my all-time favorite tag teams winning the tag belts, that's going to be my pick for best match during this period. And the MVP, there are a couple runner-ups. I could give it to the Nitro Girls, who really, captured everybody's attention during this time. The NWO for being the major bad guys that they were, specifically Hogan and Bischoff and Curt Hennig, for being easily the most hateable guys of the bunch, for sure. Diamond Dallas Page, who was still coming around strong as one of the big up-and-comers and icons of WCW, the WCW brand. I think DDP deserves a lot of credit for that. Lex Luger, who, like I said, peaked with his big victory over Hulk Hogan on the 100th episode, biggest moment of his career. And I'm also going to give it to Raven, who didn't wrestle at all. He was almost like the heel version of Sting, where he didn't wrestle at all, but he became one of the most compelling characters on the show and built a lot of anticipation for his debut, and I thought all of that was very, very effective. And he would go on to become one of the better guys for WCW in 1998. So when I get into reviewing the 1998 stuff, I'm gonna shower Raven with all kinds of compliments because he was one of my favorite things to watch. But the MVP during this period has to go to Sting. This was him at the height of his intrigue, his strength as a character, and his heroism, where he was the guy. Like, the guy that was going to save WCW from Hollywood Hogan and the NWO. And I think, without even having to work a match, Sting was the best babyface in the company, without a doubt. The most intriguing, the most exciting, and provided WCW Nitro with a lot of its greatest moments as well. So Sting gets the tip of the old hat for MVP during this period. So that pretty much covers it here. I think we're done. We are done with 1997. And like I said, the next video I do that's wrestling related is going to tie into Starrcade 97 and WrestleMania 14 and comparing the two shows. And it's something that I've been toying around with for a couple of months now, and I really... I'm really excited to do it, and it's one that, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my god, there's so many interesting things to talk about from these two shows, and I think it would be great. And I can't wait to get that video out to you guys. It's not like a heavily edited thing or anything like that. It's just a matter of me finding the time to sit down and watch both shows, and then film, take notes and film my feelings and make all the points that I want to make. So it takes a little bit of prep time to do it, but once I get it out there, I think it's going to be really, really good. So that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Just be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description down below. But that is all I have. Hopefully you all had a good weekend, and I will see you all later.